I paid for my sister's wedding flowers. I need you to know that before I tell you anything else. Not because it's the worst thing, it's not. It's not even close to the worst thing, but because it's the one I keep coming back to. Maybe because flowers are so unnecessary, so purely decorative. You don't need flowers to get married. You just want them. And Claire wanted peonies, specifically blush pink, from a florist in the city that charged like they were growing them on the moon. And she asked me 3 weeks before the wedding, her voice soft and slightly tearful. And I said yes before she finished the sentence. I was 26. I had been working for 2 years. I had a savings account that I was just beginning to take seriously. She never paid me back, not because she forgot. Claire doesn't forget things that matter to her. It just didn't matter to her. And I told myself that was fine, that it was a gift, that you don't calculate these things between sisters. That was the first lie I told myself. There were many more after it. I got very good at them. Here's what you need to understand about my family before any of this makes sense. My parents, Eleanor and Clive, had 2 daughters and one clear favorite. Not in the cruel, obvious way you read about. Nothing so clean as that. It was subtler. It was the way my mother's voice changed when Claire called versus when I called. The warmth that entered it, the way she'd say, "Oh, darling," and you could hear her actually settle into the conversation, like she'd been waiting for it. When I called, she was attentive and kind and slightly brisk. Because I was capable, and my calls were therefore shorter and less urgent, and she had things to get on with. I was the easy one. That was my role. Alice doesn't need much. Alice is fine. Alice will sort it. I sorted everything. I sorted my own university applications at 17 because my parents were in the middle of something with Claire, a boy, a falling out, something that required emotional bandwidth my parents didn't have left over. I sorted my own first job, my own flat, my own car, my own everything. I did it quietly and I did it well, and nobody celebrated any of it because that would have meant noticing it first. Claire's first job got a family dinner, a nice restaurant, white tablecloths. Claire's first flat got my father helping her move and my mother sending a hamper. My first flat got a text from my mother that said, "So pleased you're settling in. Claire sends love." I put my phone down and I assembled a bookshelf by myself, and I told myself it was fine, that I was independent, that I didn't need the fanfare. Third lie, but who's counting? I should tell you about Raymond. Raymond is my brother-in-law. He is the kind of man who never raises his voice because he doesn't need to. He's worked out, and I think he worked this out quite early, quite deliberately. That soft delivery is more effective than volume. That if you say something quietly, with eye contact, with patience, people spend more time questioning themselves than questioning you. He told Claire, when they were first together, that I had never really supported their relationship. He told her this privately, early on, and then he waited. And Claire, because she loves him, and because love makes people want to believe the people they've chosen, started looking at me slightly differently. Just slightly. Just enough that I could feel it but couldn't prove it. When I asked her about it once, gently, because I was always gentle with Claire, she said, "Raymond just feels like you've never really warmed to him." And then she looked at me with this soft, concerned expression, like she was delivering a helpful piece of feedback. I had cooked Raymond dinner the first time Claire brought him home. I had been nothing but warm to him for 18 months. But he had planted a seed, and it had grown in the dark, and now Claire was tending it without knowing he'd put it there. That was the first time I understood who I was dealing with. The borrowing started small. Of course it did. It always starts small. A few hundred the year after the wedding. Raymond's car needed something. They'd pay me back next month. Next month became the month after. The month after became just never. Not acknowledged. Not addressed. If I raised it, Claire would get this pained look and say they were just a bit stretched right now, and I would feel somehow like I had done something wrong by mentioning it. Over 4 years, I'm an auditor. I kept records because that's how my brain works. The number grew to something I'm not ready to say out loud in a restaurant. I'll just tell you it's more than my first annual salary. I'll let you sit with that. And every time Raymond asked, not Claire, Raymond, he would call or come by and he'd tell me what they needed and why. And there was always a reason. There was always a context that made refusal feel small, feel ungrateful, feel like I was choosing money over family. Once, this was maybe 2 years in, I said I couldn't. I said I was stretched myself, which was true. I was saving for something. I had plans I hadn't told anyone about yet. And Raymond didn't argue. He didn't shout. He just looked at me for a moment and said, "After everything Claire has done for you, I didn't expect this. After everything Claire has done for you." I want you to really hear that sentence. I want you to feel what it does, because it didn't just ask me for money, it restructured reality. Suddenly I was a person with a debt. Suddenly Claire was a creditor and I was the one who owed something, and wasn't I being selfish, wasn't I being small, after everything she'd given me? I couldn't locate a specific thing Claire had given me, but the sentence was so confident, so gently delivered, that I started doubting my own memory. Maybe I was forgetting things. Maybe I was being unfair. I transferred the money that night. He put his hand on my shoulder the next time I saw him, just rested it there briefly and said, "Good, at least you finally know your place." I told myself it was a strange thing to say. I filed it away. I didn't take it out and look at it for a long time. The moment that cracked something open in me wasn't Raymond. It wasn't even the money. It was my mother. I had just been passed over for a promotion at work. I'd been covering a senior position for 11 months. I'm a marketing manager. I had been doing the job of the person above me while they were on extended leave. I had the results and the documentation and the reviews to prove it. The firm gave the role to someone external. They said it was a fit decision. They thanked me for my patience. I came home and I sat on my kitchen floor. Not the sofa, the floor. I don't know why, and I called my mother. I don't call my mother when I'm falling apart. I never have, because falling apart is Claire's territory and I learned to keep out of it. But that evening I needed her. I needed someone to pick up the phone and say, "I know, that's awful, I'm sorry." She picked up. I told her what happened. There was a pause and then she said, "Oh, Alice, that's a shame. Listen, while I have you, Claire's been having a really hard time lately. Raymond's contract has fallen through again and she's been struggling. I think she could really use your support right now." I stayed on the floor for a long time after that call. My promotion, my 11 months, my kitchen floor. And somehow I ended the call with a list of ways I could help Claire. I didn't make any dramatic decisions after that night. I didn't call anyone and announce anything. I didn't send a message I'd regret. I just sat with what I now knew. I knew that my family had a structure, and that structure required me to be a resource. Not a person, a resource. Stable, accessible, undemanding. Something you drew on when you needed it and didn't think about when you didn't. I knew that Raymond had been deliberately managing my position in the family for years. Not because he was evil, because it was useful. A sister-in-law who feels perpetually indebted is a very convenient thing to have. And I knew, and this was the quiet, terrible one, that my parents had let it happen. Not actively, not with intention, just with the gentle, habitual inattention of people who had decided, long ago, which daughter needed their energy and which one didn't. I sat with all of that. I didn't perform it for anyone. I just let myself know it fully for the first time without softening it. And then I decided what I was going to do. The next time Raymond called, 6 weeks later, different ask, same architecture, I listened to the whole thing. I let him finish. And I said, "I can't help with that. Not I can't right now. Not I'm a bit stretched. Just I can't help with that." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I would have thought family meant something to you, Alice." I said, "Take care, Raymond," and I ended the call. My hands were completely still. That surprised me. I'd expected to feel something violent, adrenaline, guilt, the familiar pull to call back and fix it. But there was nothing like that. There was just quiet. The specific quiet of a room after a noise has finally stopped. I enrolled in a professional qualification the next morning. Something I'd been looking at for 2 years and kept deprioritizing because there was always somewhere else for my money and energy to go. I paid for it in full. Didn't tell anyone. I stopped attending the Sunday dinners that were really just an opportunity for everyone to need things from me. I declined politely. I gave work as the reason. Nobody pushed very hard, which told me something. I stopped being the first to call. I stopped filling silences. I stopped translating my own needs into a language small enough not to inconvenience anyone. I just stopped subsidizing the version of me that they found most convenient. The qualification took 14 months. I passed in the highest band. My firm offered me a senior role. I negotiated it, properly, with preparation, the way I'd only ever prepared for other people's problems before, into something better than they'd initially offered. I moved into a new flat, nicer, further away. I didn't tell Claire directly. She found out through my mother and sent a message that said, "So proud of you, Al." 3 exclamation marks. Years of watching me quietly dismantle myself for her comfort and her husband's convenience, and what I got was 3 exclamation marks on a Tuesday afternoon. I replied with a thank you and left it there. My mother came to see the new flat a few months after I moved in. She walked around it slowly, touched things, looked out the window for a while. Then she sat down at my kitchen table, and she looked at me, and her eyes were doing something I hadn't seen them do before. She said, "I haven't been fair to you." I didn't say anything. She said, "I think I told myself you were fine because it was easier, because you always seemed fine, and Claire always seemed to need more, and I took the path that felt most urgent and she stopped. I think I missed a lot." I looked at my mother. This woman who had loved me in the ways she knew how, which had not always been the ways I needed, who had spent 30 years choosing the urgent over the important and calling it motherhood. I reached over, and I put my hand over hers. I said, "I know, Mum." Not "it's fine," not "don't worry about it." Just "I know," because she deserved honesty more than she deserved comfort, and I had been handing out comfort I didn't have for long enough. Claire called last month. Not about money, just called, which almost never happened. We talked for a while, surface things, careful things, and then she said quietly, "Raymond and I are going through something." I said, "I'm sorry to hear that." She said, I think some things weren't right. I'm figuring it out." I didn't say "I told you so." I didn't say anything that would have made me feel better at her expense. She was my sister, and she was starting to see something, and that mattered. I said, "When you're ready to talk, I'm here." And I meant it, just differently than I used to mean it, not as a resource, not as a vault she could draw on, as a person who loved her and had limits and was no longer willing to pretend otherwise. I drove home from the office last week, and I sat in my car for a moment before going inside. Just a moment. The street was quiet. My building was lit up. My flat, my name on the lease, my life, the one I had built in the margins of everyone else's needs, and then slowly in the full center of my own. I thought about the flowers, the peonies, the florist who charged like they grew them on the moon. I thought about being 26 and saying yes before she finished the sentence. I thought about how long I had confused being needed with being loved. And I thought, I'm not that girl anymore. Not because I hardened, not because I stopped loving them, but because I finally understood that my softness was never the problem. The problem was who I kept handing it to. I got out of the car, went inside, made tea, put my feet up in my own quiet flat and felt, for the first time in a long time, completely at home in my own life. That was enough. That was more than enough.